Hi, I'm John Stevens,
This is Matt Russell.
and this is Pod Have Mercy.
This is Pod Have Mercy.
Today we're going to talk with our good friend, Jerry Weber,
Yes.
who was on staff here at Chapelwood for 16, 17 years, started our Center for Christian Spirituality and our contemplative community, Baptist preacher who became a contemplative.
Yeah. That's a good journey for him.
And just a
for
cool
us.
dude.
Yeah, great guy. Great guy.
But what I love about what we can do with him today is we know him well, and
Yeah.
I thought we would we've been doing a lot of stuff around what we're dealing with, but I want us to learn and grow in this season, but I also want us to have some fun.
Yeah.
I hope that we can find that.
Yeah.
Well, so one of the things we've been doing the last couple of weeks, and you've been following along, is talking about just all sorts of things related Corona, all the Rona stuff, and whether it's from the medical people or spiritual care or other stuff. And one of the things Jerry wanted to invite you to come today, because first off, all three of us know each other pretty well, and I thought we'd talk about ways we can spiritually move through this and maybe other practical tips. I thought we'd just have fun.
Good.
Because, everybody needs fun.
Yes.
I'm good for fun.
I have found myself now, I am watching old Kung Fu movies.
Oh, good.
Yeah. If you really, there's something really different about old Kung Fu movies.
We need to alter your voice stuff on Sunday for
so
the
that my
service,
mouth doesn't
so
match
that it looks
my
like an old
words.
Kung Fu.
Oh, that would be great.
That'd be awesome.
Jeff could do that for you.
I bet he could.
Yeah, just delay the audio and the video together a little bit.
That would be great.
Well, but one of the things about the old Kung Fu movies, like, for example, the 36th Chamber of Shaolin, right? Right.
Yeah.
So this guy, he goes because he wants to learn Kung Fu, and he has to start in the first chamber, and it doesn't have anything to do with fighting. He has to just learn how to keep balance across these logs floating on the thing to get to the
Mr.
chow
Miyagi.
tent, to the dinner, right? And so he's all mad because he wants to be doing Kung Fu, but every one of these early chambers are all just about carrying water or ringing a bell and all this. And it made me think about, because all of it, of course, is fundamental stuff to strengthen your body and your balance and all this so you can then get ready. And I thought about, in this season, is sort of stripping away, and we have grief, and we have anger, and we have frustration, and it's it really reveals how well we've taken care of the basics of our self-care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sort of peels away all that.
That's right. That's the Mr. Miyagi effect, right? All these kind of things that you don't know you're going to need until you come into the place where you need them, right?
Yeah, it's like my core muscles. They don't exist. But
Right.
they really come in handy from time to time.
It would be helpful.
if you maintain those things and keep those things. And I thought, what are the things that we need to just kind of return to the core?
Yeah, spiritual
Core and mental and physical, and because now this thing is ramping up. It's not only that, but the decisions of going back to work, and you're gonna have some people don't want to go back out right now. They're not ready. They think it's too early. But then, of course, in Houston, we got the oil prices that are dropping, and so a lot of people's personal financial situation is threatened.
Right.
And a lot of the conversations that I've been on, there's no, as you guys know this, there's no advanced advice that unlocks some secret gnosis or something.
Right.
It's really, you just get back to start talking about what really matters, what's important, what are the fundamentals. I was talking with a guy recently, and he was just saying there's so many things that I fundamentally believe in, and he said I kind of let those go. I lost sight of some of the basic fundamental things and operated outside of those principles, and it led him to some places and spaces that were not good and healthy.
That's great.
So what are you, outside of binge watching The Americans, What are you doing during this season to keep yourself sane?
Yeah, I'm trying to check in with myself regularly and ask some kind of core questions about what does it mean to be me today? What am I feeling today? What does it mean to be Jerry in the particular context I'm in? And to not try to fix anybody else, not try to, work somebody else's side of the street, but do my own work. I get a lot of silence and a lot of solitude, which I like that. You guys know me. I like that. I'm drawn to that. So this has given me permission to do what I'd like to do anyway. So I read a lot. I write a lot. I'm meditating more. Centering prayer is usually what I do. Spending time in scripture, digging around, finding things. I'm also reading and writing more poetry now than usual, just to keep that part of my brain alive. And I find that I journal a lot, but my poetry, when I write poetry, that's where kind of the real stuff comes out and gets to the page. So, I think for me, and I think I say this to other people from time to time, I think spiritual practices are things that we engage in for a season, and we kind of take our temperature and say, what season am I in? What does this feel like to me? And I'm aware that during the coronavirus, the season is not the same for everyone. Mm-hmm. There are some people who are feeling desolate and kind of in a wintertime, and there's some people who are feeling overwhelmed, like it's summertime and the heat's on, and it won't stop. And so everybody's at a different place. So for me, that analogy helps me to try to find spiritual practices that are appropriate to the season that I'm in at that particular moment. And that may not, translate to John or to Matt or to anybody else, but it's what I do. And then I come back and I revisit that after a while and say, okay, how's this working? And are there some of these spiritual practices that I've engaged in that, I went into them with good intentions, but they're just not getting it done. I'm not, I'm still as anxious and fearful and scared as I ever was. So maybe I just need to let that one go and try something else. So for me, a part of that is always trial and error.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee that anything's going to be the one thing that works, so to speak, at any given moment in time, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I think if I check in with myself every day, there's a fine line between checking in with yourself every day and schizophrenia.
Tell us more about that, John. Say more.
There was a mom told me recently, if you see me talking to myself, I'm just having a parent-teacher conference. I don't know. You've been talking a lot. You and I have been doing a lot with the notes on a weekly basis and things, and I'm fascinated by some of the anchoring activities that you present. That maybe it's, we're all in a different place, but you're doing a lot. It seems like there's a lot of creativity in some of the stuff that you talk about, like making a collage or
right.
poetry or writing a song or things. And I guess my brain, the way I work is, I guess there's some things I'm creative about, but especially with spiritual practices, I guess maybe I'm not creative enough. But what do you find that, engaging in that creative aspect, and that seems to be important for you lately? And how does that connect to your spirituality for people that maybe, like someone like me, who's just, a collage? I got plenty of time to make a collage.
That's not your first go-to practice.
Do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And what is a collage?
Yeah.
I know what a collage is. I made him when I was in elementary school.
That's as likely as him going to do Build-A-Bear or something, right? That's right. Probably not going to happen. Nor me.
Well, Build-A-Bear may be good. Maybe a good place to start. I find for me that fear and anxiety kind of live in that other more rational part of my brain, the part that wants to manage and control. And then when I feel out of control, fear and anxiety come. I get scared about things, frightened about what the future is. And that if I can move into that more creative part of myself, that seems to be more where my soul lives, where spirit moves. And so if I can begin to tap into that in some simple ways, in some creative ways, then it's almost for me as if I'm learning a different vocabulary. Wow. And so when I'm engaged in some kind of creative exercise, like doing a collage or writing a haiku, just a 5-syllable, 7-syllable, 5 syllables, anybody can do that. So those things begin to move me into a more soulful place that allows me to discover a vocabulary for what's going on that doesn't just live in my head. It lives down in this deeper part of me, in my heart or my soul, or however you want to envision that. So I have to intentionally get to that place. You guys both know me really well, and I haven't always been able to do that. It's only been in the last 18, 20 years that I began to make some movement in that way, but still my default is to live in my head. Yeah. So I have to, I have to be intentional about reading poetry, writing a haiku, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables, or thumbing through a magazine and finding images in a magazine that represents what it feels like to be Jerry today. So for me, I'll often ask that question of myself out loud, because during the day, I'm talking to my dog. My dog is my coworker, and I'm one of those memes now. But I'll literally say, just so I can hear myself articulate that, what does it feel like to be Jerry today? And then to begin to explore that in words. I may begin with words, but then I may go get a magazine, a nature magazine or a golf magazine or some magazine, a travel magazine, an art magazine, something that has a lot of images in it, and then just thumb through it. And whenever I find an image, notice an image that stirs me, and I don't even have to know why it stirs me, I rip that page out. And then I keep thumbing through, and I get 2 or 3 or 4 of those images, and then I begin to sit with them and say, what does this image say about the state of my soul today, what I'm feeling, what it feels like to be Jerry today? And so that, that's a kind of practice that some people would say is kind of goofy, but it puts you in touch with a different part of your being, and it gives you a different way to process that's kind of a nonverbal way. It's tapping into a language, a vocabulary that's more heart, more soul, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that makes a lot of sense. It feels like that that anxiety or fear, or just the desire to be in control and whatever constriction happens around that, really covers that space up and is antithetical to that space. And so it needs practices that move under the radar of that, or at least confront that in a way that can pass through it. It sounds like, is that true?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, anytime I would ever ask a group, and you guys have probably done the same things in Bible studies or sermons or small groups where you have interaction, you ask people, where is a place that brings life to you? That when you're in that space, you just feel life. And most all of those responses through the years have always been places in the natural world, right? Places in the created world, on a mountaintop somewhere, at the beach somewhere. Well, what is it? Those are not verbal places. Those places are filled with images and filled with symbols and filled with things that are living apart from myself. And so to be a fearful person, or an anxious person, but to be able to put myself in a place where I don't have to depend on, my mental resources to explain this or to define it, to be in that place, can be life-giving.
Right.
And so that's the same kind of thing that we're doing when we play around with these images. We're getting out of the controlling part of our brain, and we're getting into this part of our brain that's more in tune with creativity, with images. And I found through the years that most people who are making whatever you'd define as progress in the spiritual life are people who are growing in creativity.
Yeah. It seems like some of the things that John's been talking about with anchor points and some of the sermons that he's been preaching, and then that some of the studies that books I've been reading, and some of the smaller groups I've been operating within, has really been at some core talking about the reimagining our social imagination. How do we? And it seems like the prophets do that, the Psalms do that. Yeah. Jesus comes along and talks about the kingdom as a different way of imagining the world, right? And so there's the world as we know it, that is all about resources and constriction and who's on top wins and all these ways. And so, and we're seeing it play out in our culture. And then this other dynamic of spirit that comes along and says, let me show you a more excellent way. But that way seems to be hidden. That way seems to be, in some ways, inaccessible if we're continuing to do the same things over and over again.
Sure. Yeah. Consider the lilies of the field. Consider the birds of the air. So Jesus is rarely pointing us to something to believe.
Huh. Yeah.
He's usually pointing us to something to consider or something to practice, a way of being in the world.
Yeah. He wasn't overly analytical.
Yeah.
It wasn't really heady intellectual. What do you call it? Systematic theology.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, look over there. See that guy throwing seed in the field?
Yeah.
Let me tell you what that's like. Let me tell you what I think of when I see that. Well, one of the things...
And what we say when we hear that is, oh, yeah, well, teach me how to throw seed like that. Well, you missed the point. The point is the field, and the point is the seed goes everywhere.
Right.
And you've got all these beautiful images that the seed falls in these 4 different places, but God is this extravagant, generous God who throws it everywhere. God doesn't care if it's good soil or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Goes in the cracks.
We get, all tied in knots over, how do I throw the seed the right way? What do I believe about the seed?
Yeah, the underhanded. I kind of like the underhanded
technique.
Yeah.
The side
shuffle,
casting. Yeah,
that's because that's the right way of doing it. It's all about the right way of throwing that.
Doing it. Yeah.
Are you watching a lot of news?
I am. Well, not a lot. I watch half an hour of local news and half an hour of national news in the evening, and I do some just quick reading in the morning. I was doing a lot more reading, but now it feels like the same things over and over again. So I'll scroll through the headlines and maybe read, for 15 or 20 minutes. But it's one of the things that I've tried to be real diligent about, was not getting consumed in that.
Well, that's what I was going to ask is what are your thoughts on being too overly consumed? And then I wanted to ask you about your social media usage.
Oh, good. Well, that won't take long.
That won't take long.
I already know the answer to that question. Jerry's like, is it my MySpace face? What is it called? MySpace book?
Just about the time I feel like I've got courage to jump into social media, then something happens, something in my family or something, somebody will say something, and it just bleeds the courage out of me.
It's a good thing.
At some point, I need to
stay away.
I miss out on a whole lot of grandchildren pictures because I'm not on it. But
you can do. There's a new thing that our children's ministry is doing. This thing called Marco Polo.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's look for it. Talk to your kids about it. It's like an app where you send each other videos, but it's just you and the kids. So it's almost like a text message, but you're shooting a little video of you saying something to them, and then they send you one back, and then you send them one. So it's like having a text thread, except you're doing it on video. Isn't that the way it works?
Okay. Marco Polo. That's great.
Marco Polo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at me talking like I know about technology.
Look at you.
Are you getting exercise?
I'm walking a couple of miles 3 or 4 times a week, but that's about usual. We have to drive to walking space. Yeah, there are a lot of nice outdoor places. I think that's a really helpful thing for me and for people too, is to get outside, to connect with the natural world that way. That seems to be very healing. I've already mentioned that. People talk about that as a life-giving practice, to be out at a beach or in a mountain somewhere and to be a part of that. When I do that, I realize, and I realized that pretty immediately. And when did I move here? 2018. 2 years ago that all the daily stuff that I was doing work-wise and life-wise that seemed really important, that there was a whole part of the created world here or created world anywhere that didn't really care how stressed I was every day. And I think I heard John O'Donohue say that years ago, and it didn't make any sense to me because I was kind of in that sort of anxiety production, get it done sort of thing. And I realized pretty quickly that, the raccoons that come to my patio and the deer that run across my yard and the birds that feed out back and the trees that move with the seasons, they don't care about my stress. And right now they don't care about the coronavirus. I think it was Bob Kidd that said a couple of weeks ago, he pointed out how nature is healing itself because there are no emission, not as much emission being, thrown out into the atmosphere. And, in a sense, the natural world just continues on. So how can we be a part of that? How can we immerse ourselves in that? So I think getting outside is really important.
Yeah, the raccoons are like, look, we got rabies. We're going to let you handle the corona.
You get corona.
you guys on two legs, you get the coronavirus.
So 2 weeks ago, we're in bed. It's the middle of the night, and I hear this ruckus on the patio. And so I sneak to the slider and look outside, and it's this huge raccoon just looking me eyeball to eyeball.
It's a big raccoon.
Have you seen the commercial where the raccoons are in the trash?
Oh, that's
and he's
great.
looking at him and goes, "Hey, try this. It's disgusting." Seriously, you've got to try this. It's horrible.
Dog. No. I was outside 2 or 3 days ago, and a fox ran across the yard.
Wow.
Really?
Pretty cool, yeah.
That's been an amazing thing in Houston is watching like some of as the pollution kind of descends to watch like the sky turn. Like yesterday, the sky was the bluest as I've seen it in years in Houston, and watching some of the birds and those things are just, it's been really amazing to watch like the natural order repair itself. And I think you're right when Jesus starts talking about using all those kind of imagery, even the prophets using the imagery of roadways and the, water in the desert, that there's a sense in which we get disconnected of those things, and that a lot of our spiritual life repairs us through those things.
Yeah, there's outside, we sit in the backyard a lot. The weather's been really nice.
Yeah.
And so we sit out in the backyard almost every night, and you look up in the sky, and you got the little app, because I don't know where the stars. You can hold it up, and it tells you what the constellations and what the planets.
Oh, cool!
And you can see so many more stars. Yeah. And at night, I notice when you sit out in the back in Houston, there's always planes going over. All the time. There's no planes.
Yeah,
it's just the sky, and usually in the city, because of the lights and the smog, you don't see. We saw last night Orion's Belt, and we saw Betelgeuse and Sirius and Venus and the moon, and it was like, I don't remember seeing that many stars.
Does that kind of get to what you were saying earlier, John, about your friend that you talked to that said, I've been involved, I just got busy, and I got involved in a way of being that wasn't true to myself, and this has given me a chance to, in some ways, Sabbath. And in some ways to step back and to say, oh, I don't want to be that person, or these are activities that are not supportive of the person that God's calling me to be and that supports my deepest humanity. I think that this can be that kind of event for us if we let it.
Yeah, no doubt.
I do think that it's hard. It's hard because there are so many people who are really hurting and struggling because they need to be at work, or they rent or food, or and it's hard when you're in a more privileged position. You can take the time to slow down and notice things that you've gotten out of balance in your life. And Barbara Brown Taylor talks about that when we don't actively practice Sabbath, our illness becomes our induced Sabbath. Yeah. And so for most of us, that's that one time of the year we get the flu and we can't go to work. And so that becomes our Sabbath. Well, now the entire world, but everything is sort of turned off for a while. And I don't know that we've ever seen anything quite like that, but it forces you, and it makes some of us feel uncomfortable if we're the kinds of people that don't like to stop. or to rest or to dig deeper. That's why it didn't take very long. People were real excited. If you were in a very privileged position, you were real excited about this for the first 2 weeks, week or two.
Yes.
And then you started going like absolutely bonkers crazy because you had to get out of the house and go somewhere and do something.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the way we're wired. Absolutely. I said this before, is that, we dig through these layers, and then when we hit a raw spot, we got way too many distractions that we can consume ourselves with and never have to deal with deeper levels. And I think this thing is forcing everybody. So whether you're in a vulnerable position or place in society, it's revealing things that are very difficult. And if you're in a privileged place, it's revealing things that are very deep and raw for all of us, I think.
So that's why I think the spiritual practices have to be fluid, and you have to find the one that works for you, and whatever your season is, whatever your place in life, your time of life, that's going to be different for a young family, a young man or young woman, than it is for someone in middle age or someone at my age. You just have to find what works for you, for your season of life, for the season that you find yourself in at this moment. But I think, like you've said, John, this is a time that we're invited to dig down into some of that and to explore what's there. And, in ordinary life, we can easily be distracted and run away. And I always said that one of the easiest places to hide from God was in the church.
Yeah.
You can go to church and sit in a pew and sing the songs and listen to good sermons and all that and feel like you're really growing deep. And that's a really small part of what, of this whole picture of discipleship, what it means to use language that you're using in sermons, to orbit around God. How do I orient myself so that I'm part of this gravitational pull where God's the center and not me or not my world? And so, we're at a time now when some of those distractions have been taken away, the places that I can run to. And that's really the nature of what it means to fast in the Christian sense. The classical discipline of fasting is removing some practice that I normally engage in, whether it's food or conversation or sleep or whatever. They're all the classical spiritual disciplines are different forms of fasting. Yeah. And so I remove those so that I can intentionally put myself in that place where I can't run to those things in order to kind of medicate myself, so to speak.
That's a really interesting insight, that this is almost like a forced fast, a cultural forced fast, to say that's revealing kind of the substructure of our own kind of self-preservation, in a sense. Yeah. I hadn't thought of it that way, Jerry.
I think the thing I'm hearing today that comes out is about, it seems to be a lot of accessing some part of you that you're not typically accessing. Mm-hmm. You talk about creativity, and I think that I'm going to give that a try. My girls have been painting at home, which they don't do all the time, but they're trying to find things to do. They're doing school at home, and so we're doing a lot of cooking. One of the things that I used to cook a long time ago, and you just get busy. You don't do that anymore. So now we're cooking, and we decided that each one of us are going to take a night to be responsible for coming up with a menu and cooking dinner. So I've been watching a lot of these YouTube videos, Bon Appetit, Test Kitchen, and they try to make homemade, Girl Scout cookies or all this kind of. I'm not doing any of that, but I just think it's interesting to access and try something new. So one of my daughters bakes, and she's trying new things outside the box to bake, and the other one is trying to cook different things. And to me, it's like, if we can access something we haven't accessed before. And one of the things that I have done with you before when you were here is these silent day retreats, where we would go and we'd engage in a time of centering prayer, and then we would go out on our own. If someone was not really well versed in centering prayer, but maybe they wanted to try something different, what would be your 101 sort of intro to taken some time to sort of steal away and maybe engage in something new and creative around prayer?
Yeah, I would think just to start off small. If you're going to start centering prayer, some kind of meditation, most teachers say start with 20 or 30 minutes or do 20 or 30 minute sit. But I'd say start with 5 minutes or 4 minutes or 7 minutes and take a word that has some energy for you. Take love or peace or shalom or God or Jesus, and just use that as a word, almost as a kind of mantra to whisper to yourself to keep you centered. And that's what centering prayer is. It comes from an image that Thomas Merton used about anchoring in the center of God. Mm-hmm. And so that word becomes your center, and you just sit still and you repeat that word. You whisper that word to yourself. You just whisper it internally. And when thoughts come, when distractions come, you just let them go and you come back to this word and you let the word keep you centered. Most of us have cell phones or mobile phones where we can set a timer so you don't have to watch the time. You can set it for 5 minutes or 7 minutes, and you center. And during that time, you don't have to plan anything. The whole premise of that kind of meditation is that you're touching God at a level that's deeper than your thoughts or your rational mind, even deeper than your feelings. And so you're kind of dropping anchor into the heart of God. And that word is what keeps you anchored, that word that you repeat. So that's an anchoring practice. You do that, and then you come out of that. You might want to say the Lord's Prayer at the end of it, and then pull out a journal, and you might jot down a few things about how that experience was, how difficult it was, or how peaceful it was. You can take out a magazine and find images that represent what that experience was like for you. But you can have your own little mini retreat where you are, just in 30 minutes or an hour, as a way of dropping anchor.
How are you keeping up with your family? Are you all Zooming, FaceTiming, or are you just phone calls?
Phone calls, FaceTime. Yeah. We're close enough to grandkids that we kind of see grandkids every once in a while. They're 15 minutes away. So, we see them.
What do you think about, both of you? What do you think about this whole thing? People are saying, well, reach out to people maybe you haven't talked to in a long time. Take advantage of maybe extending relationships. Have y'all done any of that? Or have you heard that as something people have been encouraging?
Yeah, I've heard that. Mm-hmm. I've maybe reached out to one or two people that way, but not, I haven't. Maybe I should, but I haven't.
Well, I didn't introduce that to like induce guilt or shame in your life.
No, because
Jerry, how many old friends did you talk to this week? Because you're way behind.
No, one of my ongoing questions has been, God, what are you inviting me to do? How are you inviting me to step into this? Yeah. And honestly, to this point, I haven't heard that as a response. So I don't feel guilty about it.
Well, you're being true to what you're hearing God has. So have you done curbside at Waffle House yet?
No, I'm sorry. Curbside. No, we've done curbside at a couple of other places, but not Waffle House.
What was the guy that says, it's really difficult when you think about Waffle House opening back up with social distancing? That means that they've never actually been in a Waffle House because they literally cook breakfast in your lap at a Waffle House. They're only as big as a double wide. So 25% capacity is just me and my wife.
Yeah, me and the other cook.
You go into Waffle House. I'm sorry, no one else can come in right now. We got this couple in the corner.
I think some of the places around here have been really busy. We tried to do takeout at one of our favorite places last week and called 4 times over 15 minutes, and they never answered. And they had advertised that they were doing, takeout Tuesday and all this. And so
that's good though.
We gave up and went to Sonic.
Sonic has the best crushed ice and tater tots. And you don't have to get out of your car, which is even better.
Well, I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know all the boys and girls who are the car hops there by now.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
They're
Sad
not
to
on
say.
roller skates.
That's my life now.
Wow.
Sad to say.
Well, what is it? Another guy said, he goes, man, I said, I sure will be glad when this quarantine is over so I can go back to work, start earning some money to save up for a vacation so I can go somewhere, sit around and do nothing.
Yeah, great.
And there's a part of me that's like, I'm looking at this and it's like, had these plans for the summer and we were going to take some time off. And it's kind of like, now you feel guilty. It's like, well, you can't really take any vacation this year now.
As if this has been a vacation.
It hasn't been a vacation at all, but it's just funny because everybody's like, well, you hadn't been to work. So,
Yeah.
and this compulsion. I've found some guys and girls as well, that just feel this compulsion. They have to go into the office every day, even though they can work from home. Have you experienced that with people?
I've experienced that with myself.
Oh,
I'm
sorry. I didn't mean to
no,
make you
no,
feel
and some
bad.
of
Well,
that-
John's just throwing guilt everywhere, man.
Yeah.
Apparently that's my gift today. Shame.
You. But some of that is to social distance from three boys as well, and to kind of get some space where it's just quiet. So it doesn't feel as much compulsive about having to be at work as it is to make a dividing line between what's work and what's home. Sometimes
It's worse, boys.
Oh, Lord.
Way worse, because I'm on a Zoom call with this guy, Russell, and his son walks up and just smacks him in the face. Daughters don't do that. Daughters don't even want to be on the Zoom call. They like tiptoe in the room and they go, "Are you on Zoom?" And it's
no.
yeah, and they won't even enter the room. But the son will come in and like smack you
throw
in
a
the
ball at me. They'll walk by just like dancing and trying to break me up. I'm like, please, so I'm having to lock the door. That doesn't work because then they bang on it or they pick the lock. So it's just, it's beautiful.
Now, see, that makes sense why you come into the office.
Yeah.
I'd be coming into
It's
the
not
office.
compulsiveness. It's
Well, what did we say? If it's essential to do your job, if you can't do your job at home.
please come in. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think about the one thing? It's like indulging in moments of satisfaction in life, not being too hard on ourselves. I think there's, in our culture where we define our worth by what we produce or our job or all these sorts of things. And now we're, a lot of us are just stuck in this place where we're struggling with a crisis of identity. And, what do you guys say to people that you just, to try to let them just be okay with being in quarantine, being okay with things being still and not a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I have found being on the staff and actually kind of working alongside of you, John, is that you have a non-anxious presence about how things are unfolding, and you bring a non-anxious presence. And I think that's been so helpful to me personally and to our staff, in that then this word savor comes up for me out of that. What can I savor? Because I have the tendency, just in the way that I'm hardwired to move, to really go, to get a lot of stuff done. And there's beauty in that, but there's also this kind of compulsivity to it as well, right? And being around folks that have absolutely different gifts and different depths has been helpful to me, because I think that I'm being asked to savor some things. I went on a walk with my son on Sunday, and my 17-year-old son and I talked about things that we have not talked about ever.
Yeah.
And it was just, I got back from that. We were about halfway through or coming back around. And I said, "Hey, do you want to keep walking, go another loop? Or do you want," he's like, "Oh yeah, I'd like to go another loop." And so for 2 hours, this kid told me about his inner life. And I was just, it was like a sunrise. So yeah, I would not have had that if I was, busy moving. So yeah.
That's beautiful, Matt. Thanks.
Well, there's
That's
something about savor's a good word. There's something about being present in the moment, learning to be present where you are in the moment instead of wanting to be somewhere else. And the other thing about Sabbath and rest is it's the freedom from compulsion. Yeah. And I find that even on my Sabbath days, there's still in me these yearnings, these things that I feel like I have to do, this email I have to return, or this text message I have to return, or this thing I have to finish. And so the compulsion is there. And I remember one of my former professors said that it took them 7 years of intentional practice to finally reach a Sabbath day and to be able to look at the dishes in the dishwasher or in the sink or the cobwebs in the corner of the house and just not be moved at all to do it. There was no compulsion. There was no angst. They could just let it go. Yeah. And, what's the old story of the rabbi who, as soon as the sun sets, he's in his office, he says, "It is finished. It's done. It's finished." He goes home and you begin the Sabbath. And I hope, my hope is that if we come out of this and we go right back to the same dysfunctional compulsions that we had before, maybe that's where we end today. Is what do you think? What do you hope that our society, people, that we come out of this that we're changed, that we're transformed, that we're not the same? What's your dream? If there's a dream, maybe that's not the right way to say it, but out of this, what's your hope? And for me, it is that we just don't start church back up and everything goes back to exactly the way it was. I would love to see a humanity reshaped by this.
Come on.
More loving,
Come on.
more forgiving, more patient, more inclusive, more kind and generous,
Yes.
and less hard on ourselves, because now we've all faced whatever you believe about this. This is a very dangerous thing that takes people's lives.
Yep.
And so can we come out on the other side of this and not be the same? I don't know exactly what all that looks like, but that's my hope.
Can I borrow that hope? That's good.
Yeah, that is good. I think what I would have said was real similar to that. The people come out with a sense of who they are, and that who they are really is the core of their being and not what they do, what they produce. And that we do have the first 2 or 3 weeks and all the commercials began to shift on television and all, and we're in this together and we're doing, we band together and all that. I've wondered if we'll still have those commercials playing, when we're 8 weeks into this, or if we're ready to tear each other's throats. But I would hope that there would be some sense of our common humanity and who we are as people in relationship with one another, and that we might sense something in this crisis. Something arises within us that has been there all along, but we've been oblivious to it. How do we live in that new thing?
Yeah, I love that. I was wondering and thinking about that word "remember." That when Yahweh brings his people through difficult times, he has them stop and to build something, and to say, you're gonna walk by this sometime and your kid's gonna ask, what is that? Right. And that's going to be then a part of the way you've integrated. And we've got task force and folks that are doing amazing things about thinking about reopening and all that. And I wonder, should we create a spiritual task force that says, what are the things we don't want to forget out of this? That we don't, as John said, return to just kind of normal ways. Should we think through a spiritual task force that says, folks, we said we weren't going to forget this. How we doing?
Oh, that's good.
All right.
That's like building our altar, the rocks.
Yeah, that's right.
So what is
Ebenezer?
Yeah. No, I really like that. So you're gonna lead that task force.
I'm on it, dude. Can I?
Yeah,
that's a task force I get behind.
No, I think that's awesome. I mean, it's like I'm always so focused on the reopening and the tactical. And it's like that's the stuff, though. Yeah, I mean, you'd like some monument of remembrance of this season of life.
Yeah.
So that we could touchstone, and you walk into church like the rock at the Clemson Stadium, when the football team comes in and they touch the rock. It's like that.
I like that.
Something that you remember that touches that moment.
Yeah. And it could be something that, like you had said, Jerry, all these things might be different for each of us, right? What the Holy Spirit is working on me is not the same as working on you and John and other folks in the community. But there are these things that if we allow the Spirit of God to work within and even in spite of us often, that there might be something that we become that we couldn't. And what do we not want to forget about that? We want to let go and just say, oh, the crisis is over. I can take back this normal life, which is like so hollow in some ways without the Spirit's animating it.
Yeah. Bill Curley said last week, he quoted Richard Rohr.
Yeah.
Rohr says that the two opportunities we have for growth are great love and great crisis or great tragedy. And most of us kind of ignore it when great love happens. So we end up being pushed into these learning moments or these growth moments through crisis or difficulty. And so I would just hate to see all this wasted.
Yeah.
To see it, it's been difficult. It's more difficult for some people than for others. And I hope, that we don't waste that it doesn't just pass by and, all of a sudden we flip the switch and the lights are back on.
Yeah, Edgar Schein doesn't have as much confidence in humanity as Richard Rohr does, because he says the only thing that moves us to radically change in life is the fear of survival. He said that he would like to think that the noblest parts of humanity would see that they need to change and would be motivated to change and would change. He said, but he hasn't found that to be that doesn't really work in real time.
Yeah.
And so we've got the survival anxiety going on, whether it's, literal or financial or whatever else. So I'm hoping that there will be a lot of transformed individuals coming out of this.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful.
But really, in the sense of spiritual survival, and spiritual kind of thriving, then this is the golden moment. I mean, this is the opportunity.
Yeah. So what do you? Two more episodes of The Americans tonight. 2 more episodes.
Probably so. Yeah, probably so. 2 more episodes.
So you got to watch Kung Fu Hustle.
This will be in the show notes, folks.
Yeah.
Kung Fu Hustle.
Kung Fu Hustle.
I don't think I get that channel.
No, it's Netflix. You get Netflix, don't you? I think it's on Netflix. Yeah, Kung Fu Hustle, and make sure you also watch Ip Man.
Ip Man.
IP Man. Ip Man.
Okay.
There's like a whole series of movies, and in the third one, Ip Man dukes it out in the final battle with Mike Tyson.
You're serious? You've watched this stuff,
Dude.
What did you think I was lying? This is like pod have mercy. I cannot
tell a lie. This is like truth serum here. We're giving out.
No, dude, I got a whole list. I'll send you a whole list of.
Can I ask a question, John?
Yes.
How long have you been into kung fu movies, and when did that start? I'm fascinated.
Well, most people don't know that I am a 6 level black belt. No, that is a lie. No, I've always liked the kung fu movies. Thanks for being with us.
Guys.
And
all right.
We love you. Stay safe.
Love you. Okay. Good to see you.
Take care, Jerry.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
So what did you learn today? You have now the elimination.
Wow, I have a lot to draw from.
Extreme
Kung
elimination.
Fu, it's extreme
YouTube.
elimination, Pootie Shoe and Pootie Pie.
Yeah, so we have a lot of rabbit holes to chase in YouTube now.
Yeah. Who knew? Who knew? I'm totally underutilizing the internet.
But you know what I'm going to take out of today is I'm going to try to stretch the. I'm not sure where the creative part is in me, but I'm going to try to find it.
Yeah.
Stretch it a little bit. I think I'm going to paint something.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Like one of your walls or
No. Like they have a little canvas and they paint.
Oh, that's great.
They paint things. I don't know what I'm going to paint, but I'm going to paint something.
I think what I'm going to take is that that sustained image of centering myself into the orbit of God. That's really helpful to me, and then savoring. What do I need to savor?
Yeah.
What today do I need to hang on to and savor that I might miss?
Yeah, and like you said, where are things where we build these these little remembrances. How do we create things that are going to help us to remember things we don't want to forget in this season?
Yeah.
I need to reflect on that.
Yeah.
That's a good word. Well, I'm John Stevens.
And I'm Matt Russell. And this is
Pod have mercy.